After months of negotiating, the one big beautiful bill was signed into law on July 4th. This week's edition of Off the Charts, we want to dive into the bill, what it means from a spending perspective, future deficits, and what it means to you, the taxpayer. So when we were analyzing the 869-page bill, the first thing that we saw is that it does increase spending to the tune of about $3.3 trillion in additional deficits over the next 10 years. So from a fiscal standpoint, can be very frustrating, especially once we had some of the optimism around DOGE. But the spending, the increases we're seeing really revolve around national security, so defense, border security, as well as an Iron Dome defense system. One of the other things that we did notice as a big change is work requirements for those that are receiving benefits from Medicaid as well as SNAP. Now you have to work a minimum of 80 hours a month or also volunteer 80 hours a month. The other changes we saw were on the clean energy side of things. So basically an elimination of tax credits from a wind and solar perspective, as well as the EV tax credit, which was about $7,500. That is going to be phased out. Lastly, there are some benefits for businesses, specifically the 21% corporate tax rate is staying into effect. We feel like that is a way to give back to businesses to hopefully offset some of the volatility from tariffs. Now what we want to do is take a closer look at some of the tax changes that were included in the bill. Some of the tax changes were just updates on old laws, and some of them were completely new legislation. Some of the changes to existing laws were the standard deduction slightly increased. There is now a bonus deduction for older adults. So Social Security is still going to be taxed, but this $7,600 to $8,000 bonus deduction is a way to offset some of those taxes for individuals ages 65 and older. State and local tax deduction has increased from $10,000 to $40,000. For those of you living in New York, New Jersey, Hawaii, California, this is a really good thing for you. The child tax credit slightly increased to $2,200. And then finally, the estate and gift tax exemption, which was set to sunset here at the end of this year, down to roughly about $7 million, was increased to $15 million if you're single, and then $30 million for married couples filing jointly. So that's probably the biggest change that we've seen to some of the existing laws. And then we look at some of the new legislation, tax on tips. So if you work for tips, you can now deduct upwards of $25,000 of those tips. If you make overtime, you can deduct $12,500 of those wages. And then if you're paying interest on an auto loan, you can deduct up to $10,000 of that. And then one of the unique things, they're calling it the Trump account for child savings. Basically, the government will deposit $1,000 into every child that's born, and it will grow tax-free until they're 18, and then they could access a portion, if not all of it. And then the last one would be charitable deductions. So if you are not itemizing, you can still contribute $1,000 to $2,000 if you're married to charity and get a deduction. So our overall view on this bill is probably just big frustration with the increased spending, the increased deficits, adding to the debt. The U.S. is on a path to bankruptcy, and we wish there was a little more fiscal responsibility in this bill. Although it does tend to favor Main Street over Wall Street, this should benefit middle class, lower middle class Americans in a number of different ways. That leaves us slightly more optimistic. But at the end, it seems like the Trump administration's plan is to grow our way out of the debts, out of the deficits. So that remains to be seen if that will be a successful strategy as opposed to cutting spending. But at the very least, we do have a bill signed into law. We have all the negotiating and bickering behind us, and now we can move forward with a little more certainty. So we appreciate you tuning into this week's edition of Off the Charts, and we'll see you next week.